Hello, it's Biddy Penny. Welcome back to my channel. I wanted to share a digital spotlight today, and this is from Etsy, and it's from the shop StarJamLines. So you look at these illustrations, you might recognize that gnome from Trinity Stamps, but she has lots of really beautiful illustrations. I love her style. And what's really cool is that she gives you a few files. So she gives you some where there's just the character or it's in a scene. So I printed these so that I could fold these in half, the sheet in half and fold them in half, and have two cards already on their bases. This is great for a one layer card. If you were to color that though with like alcohol markers, they would bleed through. So you may prefer to do it like this. I printed 4 to a page, and I am just going to cut these out, and then that way I can have card fronts that I just adhere to a card base. So 1 sheet of paper, 4 card fronts. And then you could watercolor or use alcohol markers, and it won't run your card base. Now I also wanted to make myself some ephemera because I wanted to make these 3 fairy images and make a set of cards. So I'm going to do a little bit of watercoloring with you guys here today and just kind of show you how I approach coloring a couple of images at the same time. Now I grabbed this Mente paper pad because I loved the kind of ethereal look of that paper. I mean, those sides are gorgeous, but we're going to use these gradient sides that have, looks like a lot of fairy dust. And then I'm bringing in my watercolors, and I'm just going to color up a little bit of these fairies here with you guys today. If I'm doing like a mass make like this, then I do try to color identical images at the same time. So I grab one color, figure out where it's going on the image, and then add it to all the images. And I feel like this is a time saver rather than approaching them one by one. So I wanted to share this technique with you. I'm not always in the mood to color or paint, but sometimes I do. Sometimes I just want to sit down and watercolor and just melt away. So that's the mood I was in this day when I made these cards. And I'm just playing with really soft colors. I felt like these images really lent themselves to pastels just because the lines are so soft and they're so small that I thought they would be really pretty in a very soft pastel. But I'm sure they would be super cute if you really like bright colors more. I'm sure they would be adorable anyway. So here are all of my colored images. I just love this gnome so much. And I watercolored this. I'm showing you the paper did warp because I didn't tape it down or anything. And this is not watercolor paper. So this paper is called Spring Hill Digital Index paper. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it from Kinko's usually. At least my Kinko's carries it for like $10 a ream. And for the last 4 years, I have used this as my card base. I have used it as card fronts, and I have loved it for watercoloring. You can't do a lot of wet on wet technique. It will warp. It's not made for watercoloring, but the way I just showed you going, with the watercolor on dry paper, it works really well. I never have any pilling from it. It does warp a little, but not to where I can't put it back in place. So you guys saw I used my punch for 4 of the fairies, and then I'm cutting these out into identical squares. And that way when I come up with a card design that I like for these, I can just duplicate it and make it easier on me. So if you're making your own ephemera, you might take this tip as well. Cut all your ephemera to identical sizes, and that way when you find a design you like, you're not troubled with making it all line up. So I'm showing y'all here how I fix this paper when it's slightly warped like that. And it totally works. You can tell there it's already flattened out, and then I just use a generous amount of tape runner from edge to edge and a little bit in the center, and it never is a problem. Another hack that you can do is run this through your die cutting machine if you have one to flatten it out. That is a great way to flatten out some paper that's a little warped. So that one I'm keeping super simple. All of the detail is really in the watercolor, and then I had added some Wink of Stella to the raspberries. And off camera I added some enamel hearts. All right, so here I'm bringing in some more punches. I want to make some quick ephemera or punched out pieces to go with my ephemera. And so I have a bunch of leaves that you see there. And then I had an idea that I left in here even though I didn't follow through with it for you guys. Maybe y'all might want to try it. But basically, I wanted to do all these white punches of butterflies and flowers. And I wanted to create a look of a die cut cover plate. But for the ones I chose, the paper I chose, the image I chose, I didn't really feel like it worked for me today, but I'm going to lay it out here so you can see where I'm going with this. Essentially, I wanted the bright paper, but then the white cutouts, and it was going to be my full background. But I didn't really, what was throwing me off really was the size of the gnome on the flower. So then I thought, well, let me try these smaller butterflies. And that was going to be better, but still not quite doing it for me. So I did bring in an actual cover plate die. This is from Lawn Fawn. I don't know if it's still available. It's just in my stash. But I'm sure there's plenty of them on the market. And here I am just going to back this cover plate with some bright yellow paper. I felt like this pink and yellow were just beautiful and tied in the flower that the gnome is sitting on so well. I just love Mente paper every time, both sides. It's always really hard to cut into it and only use one side. So here I am just gluing this flat straight down onto this piece of yellow cardstock. And then I'll bring in my little gnome, and I'm just going to glue him down too. You could definitely pop him up, but I liked the flower kind of being tucked behind the stripe. And so I went for just gluing him flat down. Now I did watercolor him, and then I went in and added details with my alcohol markers and with a Jelly Roll pen. So that's kind of how I got him to be so vibrant. And now I'm just bringing in alcohol markers to add a little color to my butterflies. We always have lots of the solid yellow butterflies floating around, and I just love them. So I mimicked those here today. And then I added in a purple. I really love digital stamps because I wanted this gnome to be super big, and I was able to make that happen. I love that you can size them to your project, you know, and to your card size. So if you want to make a slim line, you can resize digital stamps to fit a slim line design or an A2 or a mini slim line. And I love that versatility. I really appreciate it. Plus, if I just go crazy wanting to color up this gnome different ways, then I can do that because I can just print them out as many times as I want. And I love the cost. I mean, this gnome was like $2, whereas if I wanted the stamp set, it would be more. And actually, I did want the stamp set for a long time, and I could never, it was always out of stock. And so I was delighted when I found this in her shop. So I think it's really awesome that all these stamp companies are finding different illustrators to publish their work into stamp form. I definitely support both. I support Trinity Stamps. I have one of their stamps from this collection, the gnome with the sunflowers over his eyes. And, but I love that the artists also sell their work in digital format. So it's a win-win for customers, I believe. All right, so I did have a little ink on that card base, but I wasn't worried about it because I knew this card front would cover the entire thing, and I wasn't concerned about a little tiny smudge of it on the back. After all, these are handmade, and so I didn't really mind that. Okay, so now I'm bringing in another Lawn Fawn die. And this one is really sweet because it cuts out a scallop circle, but it also stitches on the paper around it. So what I did is I cut out four of the circles out of colored cardstock, and then I cut out 4 card fronts of white cardstock. And I wanted to rough up the edges just to add a little texture. Originally, I had thought about embossing this with an embossing folder, but then I felt like it could throw off the little scallop details there. And I didn't really want to do that because I want to line my scallops back up like this, and I didn't want that to be all wonky. Plus, I like how clean and simple this card is. I know if you're going through my channel, clean and simple is probably not how you would categorize my style, but sometimes I dabble. I dabble all over the place with my card making style. It keeps things interesting. So I just popped those up, and all 4 of these cards will be the same, all the 4 that have the circle fairies. This leaf punch, the sprig that I'm using is from Stampin' Up. They have 2 different ones, and I absolutely love them. I think I say it every time I pull these out, which is very often, that I wish they'd keep making them. It's just so fun having a punch that can punch out leaves for us. And then I'm bringing in these honeybee embellishments. I just wanted to add a little touch of bling or sparkle to these cards. Fairies need a lot of sparkle, don't they? So I just add those. I thought they were the perfect size. They're teeny tiny, and I love that. I'm going to show you real quick here. I decided to try to rough up my edges with all 3 card fronts, and it totally worked. So that was a time-saving hack. Instead of doing each one individually, I was able to rough up the edges of all 3 of my next card fronts at the same time. Yay! Okay, this is my final design for today, and it's so cute. I did play around here because I had all these white punched out images here. I played around with maybe using them as ephemera and adding layers, which I think would be super cute. But by the time I make my card, I change directions. Again, I'm just leaving this in here to give you guys ideas so that maybe you can take it and run with it in your craft room. All right, so I'm just kind of playing around, and I decided to grab this butterfly embossing folder, which I'm sorry is discontinued from Stampin' Up, but I'm sure there's got to be a butterfly embossing folder on the market currently. I'm not sure, or maybe one in your stash. Or it doesn't have to be butterflies, but I just wanted to use butterflies. So I am using residual ink that's on my blending brush because I don't wash them very often. And I'm just adding a touch of color so that those butterflies really pop out. And then I decide these need some splatter. So I grabbed my Wilted Violet Distress Oxide ink, and I am just going to splatter that all over. And I went to town, like I really splattered these a lot, which made them really wonderful in my opinion. And then I still wasn't done. I wanted more sparkle and shine, so I brought in my Nuvo sparkle pen and I used that to spritz dots all over and splatter. So I got kind of a clump in it in one spot, but that's okay. I knew it would be covered by my fairy, so I wasn't sweating it. And now these are much more interesting. Love them. Embossing folders is like one of my favorite things. All right, I did bring in my Stampin' Up! Heat tool, and what I love about this one is it has two settings. So setting 1 is great for drying ink, or like this, and then setting 2 is for heat embossing. So I just love that it has two settings. And I am going to glue these sweet fairies down. These are colored up. They look just like my daughter. I love coloring things that look like my children anytime I can. Okay, and I'm just going to glue these down to my card bases. I left a little area around them so that they're matted, just to give it a little more interest. So guys, I definitely recommend digital stamps. I use an inkjet printer, and I can use my alcohol markers, watercolors, and I never have a problem with the ink. I hope you enjoy these designs and that it inspires you. Even if you're not into digitals, you can make these cards with stamps. So don't ever, think that you can't replicate this design if you don't do digital stamps. I made this for a friend who just became a grandmother for the second time. And like I was saying before, I think I'm going to turn these into a set of cards to give as a gift. I just think they're so sweet. Because the fairies are small and pastel and soft, I really didn't want to bring in a really bold pattern paper or anything. I wanted to keep it clean and simple. And with this one, she could handle it. I could go a little more bold with her. All right, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I really appreciate you watching, and I always love hearing your feedback, and I hope you like it. I'm going to leave a link to StarJamLines below. I think she's absolutely wonderful. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a beautiful day. Bye.